I think what we see is oftentimes the scientific method is at the core of almost all the effective learning models I know of. And then when you couple that with other creative type processes that like design thinking and things like that, they often can form a very complementary combination. I think scientific thinking, so often we have thought about it from a natural science experimentation perspective, which has a very deductive look and feel to it. Come up with a hypothesis, you test it, you find out how the world works. Well, the scientific method actually doesn't keep you in there. It doesn't force you to be deductive, but it does force you to test the ideas, right? Which is a pretty darn important to validate stuff. What it often we forget to emphasize is how do you come up with the hypothesis? How do you create that new solution that we think is going to work really well? And that's where I think some of the other concepts and tools and techniques from design thinking and systems thinking and things like that can be infused and used to come up with better designs. I think one of the big issues that we face with organizations is they really aren't the natural world, the natural environment. Some of the pieces and parts within organizations are the natural world and follow some immutable natural laws of science, but you have all these people that seem to come in infinite variety and don't obey the immutable natural laws of science all the time, and then you put them in groups, and so the permutations are endless. And so organizations, which some people would say really don't exist, but the organizations as we define them today, we created those. We're humans, we created these organizations, we designed them. So when we're applying scientific methods to that, we're applying it to something that doesn't exist in nature. It's something we created. So we're evaluating and gaining insights into what our own creations and how humans react to those creations. And so when we apply the scientific method, we're really trying to gain insights to the organization so that we can recreate it. We can reimagine it. We say, this isn't working exactly like we thought it should work. Let's come up with a better idea informed by, turbocharged by our scientific method, and then test it again and see what we get. And so that whole learning loop of coming up with better ideas, testing them, and then learning from them, I think is just in the DNA of so many of the great and working improvement programs that we have and use effectively in organizations. In the design framework, which is embedded in the leadership framework, but it's a separate framework on how to design management systems or organization systems. One of the steps in the framework, one of the pieces, I've labeled it inspiring examples, for the very reason you're talking about, is that we can learn from others, we can be inspired by others, but if we don't creatively adapt that and create our own custom solution, at best, we're going to be followers to our competitors. At worst, we're going to implement things that simply aren't going to work in our organization. And the examples of that are legion. I mean, we've got lots of examples where people copied stuff from one culture context, put it in another company culture context, and it failed miserably. And they blamed the tool when, in fact, it was the people implementing that tool and not without creatively adapting it. That was the problem. So it is a double-edged sword. You can be inspired by other organizations, but if you're just copying, that's not the same as being inspired to create your own design. That's copying, and at best you're going to be following the other people. But if you want to lead and want to create something new, then you've got to take some risk and break some molds and come up with some different solutions and test them. And I think one of the biggest issues we face in our companies today is that we really don't want to take risk. We say we want innovation, but yet we've got an entire system set up to where you have to have predictable results before anybody will spend any time or money on it. Well, if you've got predictable results, I would contend that you're not doing anything innovative. Because if we can predict the results, we already know the answer. It's not new. And so the only time you're doing innovation is when you are doing things that you really don't know. You may have an educated guess, but you really don't know what the result is going to be and how successful it's going to be. Otherwise it wouldn't be innovation.